All right, we are live. Welcome, fiends, to Handle with Scare, presented by the Slash and Cast Podcast Network. Our show discusses horror movies and the phobias they emphasize. We are smack dab in the middle of Spooktober, which has been already a roller coaster. So many major releases, really big news for genre fans, and we're gonna be spending the next couple of months. We're trying to kind of like weave our way through things and hit some major releases, both from streaming services, theatrical releases, as well as stuff that is hitting video on demand. And with me to help break down our latest venture into that is, of course, my co-host, Hallie Hooch and John. Guys, how are you doing tonight?
Good.
We're doing good.
Got Reanimator shirts.
We got matching shirts on today.
Yeah, I didn't get this memo. I don't have my Reanimator shirt on, so I bucked the trend, but,
Who are you wearing today,
nonetheless, I'm wearing a wrestling shirt.
Oh, nice.
Ooh, yeah, ooh. I mean, it's supernatural in its own way, but, I didn't get the memo, so I'm not wearing my Reanimator shirt, even though I have one. It's just not on me at this current time. But anyways, just as a reminder, we have been doing our 61 days of Halloween watch parties nightly over on Stream Lounge, focusing on 80s genre releases. So that's been a ton of fun. And obviously, we still got, a couple more weeks of that before we wrap things up. But tonight, we are taking a look at the new Hulu release of Hellraiser, which just came out here this past week. It's one I've already watched more than once at this point. I watched it when it came out. Also watched it again last night for our Twisted Tuesday stream. And this was directed by David Bruckner, who had just done The Night House right before this, which was it was my top rated movie of last year. So, I had high expectations kind of going in. And obviously, we kind of knew somewhat what to expect in regards to what version of Pinhead we were going to get, because we were getting a good amount of behind the scenes look in regards to the aesthetics. And for the most part, I've been looking over on my Twitter timeline to kind of get a feel of what people are saying about the movie, what they're liking, what they're not liking. And it seems like for the most part, the lore of this one is kind of what's losing some of the people. A lot of the visuals are bringing people in, but they were wanting more from the Cenobites rather than, what we were getting in this case. But, we'll get to that point. But I just want to get your overall feelings of this remake of it and how you guys felt it differed from the original.
Well, I definitely have some things to say. I'm a fan of Hellraiser. It's definitely the first two Hellraiser movies are among my favorite horror movies of all time. I'm a huge Clive Barker fan. When I was a kid, I liked Stephen King, and then the Books of Blood were coming out, and there was always a big Stephen King quote that Clive Barker is the future of horror, and so I'm definitely I don't know if I want to. I definitely have issues with the lore. I liked the movie overall, but I definitely have some It's funny you mention people having some problems with the lore, because I do too. But I did like the movie overall, though.
I like the movie too. I do have some other comments, but mine are going to be a little bit more superficial. I mean, I've seen the Hellraiser movies, but I haven't rewatched those since many years ago. And while I did really enjoy the movie, I have to admit that, when I was a kid growing up, the Hellraiser movies were the pinnacle of horror. That was the kind of shit I couldn't look at straight on. I have to do one of these. And one of my biggest complaints, I think I already told John, was when in several, if not all, of the torture scenes in the new movie, I didn't think the screams were very credible. I was always I've got hooks inside my flesh in 7 different parts of my body, and somebody's going, ah. So so let me wrap that up. I wasn't as scared as I used to be with the Hellraiser movies, although of course a big part of that is that I'm a grown ass woman. I'm not some little kid anymore, looking at Pinhead and head to toe leather and freaking the fuck out.
Yeah, and that was one of the other things I saw a lot of people commenting on was the actual use of leather and kind of like the changes that we had seen, at least with BDSM culture. Obviously, like in the 80s, it was vastly different from what we're currently seeing nowadays. So we're not really seeing as much leather-clad outfits as we were used to seeing when Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2 initially came out. But I'd say, like, for the most part, like, aesthetically, this movie is extremely pleasing. There's a lot of, like, dream aesthetics. I really liked the changes that we had to the cube in itself. So we got to see different figurations, and, it was kind of, like, based off of how many sacrifices we had over the course of the movie. And also, like, the Vought Mansion in particular, I thought was really intriguing because not only was it a way to entrap the Cenobites, but it also felt like just like an extension of the cube almost, with just the way that the walls would constantly be able to rotate. Same with like the roof as well. So I thought that was really unique in its own way.
Definitely. So there were some 1990s comics that came out during the time of the first and second movie that expanded some of that lore, and some of that stuff actually comes from those comics where there was a story in one where an architect builds a building that is itself one of the cubes and is like a puzzle in itself. I kind of noticed how they seems like they were kind of drawing a little bit from that with the house, the mansion. But also, you mentioned the BDSM, which I really feel like Clive Barker is the person who brought BDSM into horror. Because before the first Hellraiser movie, you really kind of didn't have that sort of thing. And it goes also, and this is something kind of one of my sort of slight issues with this movie, is that it kind of goes to also the Cenobites themselves, where the thing that I always liked about the Cenobites that I think is really cool about them is that they're not these like monsters or demons that chase you around and try to kill everybody in sight. You have to call them. Like, they don't just try to come to anyone who, or anyone anywhere. It's like you have to go out of your way to get them to come to you. And then they're very kind of like regal and sort of sophisticated acting almost, like they're polite.
Elitist.
Yeah, they're elitist and polite even. Especially yeah. Pinhead, the original Pinhead is very polite. And you mentioned the aesthetics. I mean, as crazy for praise for this movie, as crazy as it is to say, I almost think I like the Cenobites best in this movie than the original ones. I mean, Pinhead is iconic and he's great and everything, but they definitely took it to the next level with the new Pinhead, because I'm sure you guys noticed that the new Pinhead technically isn't wearing any clothes.
The gown is flesh.
It's her skin, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that.
It's like cool. Peeled and moved around so that it's like a dress.
Retailored. Yeah. It's retailored skin, which is very creepy, but also very cool. And there's a lot more elegance to the monsters, although you could also say a lot more money. So all of the monsters look really expansive.
And they're cool, like the new version of the Chatterer, which is the one that with
finally he's biting. I was when he bit down on that arm, I'm like, finally.
Technically, the Chatterer never bites anybody. I think in the first two.
That's why I was like, if you're going to chatter your teeth, you want them to go into something.
But he looked. I thought pretty much all the Cenobites I thought looked better in this movie than in the other ones, which is kind of crazy to say.
Well, they look up it looks like the special, or just the quality of the special effects was very heightened, whereas before it was like focused on the head or the throat and then like leather.
Right, exactly.
Or here is like the whole body is just very artistically done.
which probably speaks to especially for the first movie, the budget of the movie, where they could probably literally only afford to do the head and shoulders makeup and then put leather for the rest.
But I did already like mention how I was so much. It was. They also have the benefit of the of. I know you say you don't like the lore. They also have the benefit of the, what do you call it? Just, the history of the Cenobites, and they get to improve on that. Mm-hmm. Where like they're a lot more elegant, but also, like I mentioned, like I wasn't as terrified of them as I was of the original crop. Although the guy with a stretched out face, that's that guy that got me. I got scared.
It's not that I don't like the lore. I'll get more specific. Okay. But I actually liked some of the new additions to the lore, and then other stuff I was like, yeah.
I like that this is written down.
Yeah, they had a book.
I was like, yes, there's a book.
They had a book of the dead.
I paused it. I was like, okay. That's okay.
A Necronomicon.
Yeah. Lament life.
Drawings very similar, almost kind of to the Necronomicon from Evil Dead a little bit.
I'm a nerd. I like something I can study.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I really feel like outside of just the lore aspect, really the only other, like, note that I saw that, was kind of, like, shying some people away from rating it higher was more in regards to the blood sacrifices that we saw throughout the movie. Whereas, like, in this one, like, it didn't matter if it was a human, if it was the person that initially opened the box. Hell, it could have even been one of the Cenobites being one of the targets. As long as there was blood being infused, that's all that really mattered. A sacrifice had to be made in order to, reach the next configuration. And, a lot of people had issues with that, specifically when it came to actually using it against Cenobite.
Okay, you might have an issue on that, but were you not blown away when that happened? I mean, I'm sitting there watching a movie. She stabs Chatter, and then all of a sudden, like, he very much so like, well, you got me. And he backs up and he waits his turn to die. Mm-hmm. And I was freaking out. Because...
Yeah, I honestly loved it. I was like, oh shit. Like, this is completely different in a good way.
I don't want to jump ahead too much, but initially I was kind of like, I don't like the fact that she was able to use it against a Cenobite.
Only once.
It felt sort of video gamey, where almost it was like it doesn't matter that it's one of their own beings. Like it can still work on it.
Fair. Yeah.
On one hand, I didn't.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they were still gonna get a trade one way or the other at the end.
Well, my problem with it was that they already technically have that person, like whoever that Cenobite is. Mm-hmm. They're already part of Hell. They've got their soul, basically, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then I was okay with it. Then I came around and liked it because, and not to jump ahead too much. I mean, obviously we spoil everything.
Spoiled everything.
But ultimately, I was okay with it because the whole story was essentially one big sort of trick by Pinhead to capture Vought or Voight, whatever his name is,
Voight.
To recapture him and bring him back to Hell. And so the fact that it worked, the fact that they went through the course of that like ritual and doing all that stuff, it was really like...
Oh, we don't have to concede that they were outsmarted because technically they weren't.
They weren't outsmarted because it was all part of Pinhead's plan from the beginning, which is kind of the mind-blowing thing. And I kind of wonder if some people who are giving it some negative reviews maybe didn't pick up on the fact... And this, I'll go into some other stuff too, where I had problems with the lore that I ended up liking, because... One of my problems with this movie was that in previous movies, Uncle Frank is able to escape Hell in the first two Hellraiser movies. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the story of the first two movies is Pinhead. Basically, that's a huge deal to the Cenobites because they're obviously like these super high level demon creatures, and Pinhead, the worst possible thing is the idea that somebody could escape from him and get away. And so a big part of the first two movies is trying to get Uncle Frank back into hell again.
It's not your uncle. You just call him Frank.
Well, no, because he's Uncle Frank. Because also, like, the creepy uncle, that's one of the genius things about the first two movies. It's like the whole creepy uncle concept. And so this movie is, I was sort of disappointed because I was like, the whole first 3/4 of the movie makes it feel like the purpose of the box is just to go around and stab people and then be like, gotcha.
Yeah.
Now you have to go to hell because I stabbed you.
Ah.
And then it was like, oh, she happened to not get stabbed, so she doesn't have to go to hell. Like, it was so kind of like these semantic rules that it felt a little bit silly, that they were sort of reducing the lore to be kind of more of like a standard Hollywood type of thing, like The Ring, where it's like, oh, you watched the tape, so now Samara's gonna kill you. You know, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. If you watch the tape, they'll get you. And it felt like they were sort of making it like, if the box gets you with its little stinger, then that's it. Like, you go to hell. But then I was relieved and thought, oh, that's really cool and clever, when we realized, no, like, really, Pinhead is kind of this puppet master in the story who's sort of, this is like the long con, like playing the long game of manipulating all these people and moving all these kind of pieces around to eventually recapture Vought and bring him back.
You mean like because towards the end where they're like, we're allowing you to stay? That part, did I miss a part?
What about it being about capturing Vought?
I guess not. Well,
they give her that choice at the end, you know, where she they're like, you get to choose.
Well, no, yeah, but no, before that, where Pinhead is at the water, or at the lake, or something, or some sort of water feature outside of the mansion. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to. Okay, so they maybe I should go review my notes. But okay, yeah, all right. They just, Vought was just gonna have them take. He could have just chosen Lament, but he was already stuck with sensation.
So one of my let me go a little further into my theory about this. I think this is the thing of the movie, but it's not totally spelled out. It's kind of like told a little bit in a vague way. But in the first movie especially, the box, like, I feel, is not literally like a puzzle. It's not like a Rubik's Cube where you try to like solve the sides. It's more like a test. Like in the first movie, Uncle Frank, you know, they say in the movie that it's for, they have this cool quote where it's like experiencers, like in the outer, or explorers in the outer realm of experience.
Yeah.
Where it's these people who like want the most extreme experiences that they can possibly find. Right,
because they're bored and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And so they seek out the box because there's legends around the box that you can, you know, get this like ultimate pleasure. At least in the first story, it's about how the box will give you ultimate pleasures. And then the twist is that the Cenobites believe that you achieve.
Surprise.
Well, they believe it. They're not liars, is the cool thing. They believe that the way to achieve the ultimate pleasure is through the ultimate pain, you know, through thousands of years of torture that you'll eventually be experiencing.
So, in time, if you invest enough, you will get a little bit of pleasure after 1,000 years of pain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it sucks.
And so the box is like a test. Mm-hmm. So when Uncle Frank, you know, when somebody like Uncle Frank gets the box and they mess around with it, they're gonna solve it because they want it so bad that it's just gonna solve for them and they're gonna meet.
Okay.
And then in the second movie, the reason the doctor in the second movie gets a girl who sort of mentally has problems, but she can solve puzzles. And when Pinhead shows up, he knows I'm not here for this girl who solved the puzzle. I'm here for this doctor who made you solve the puzzle. He's the one that actually wants me to show up. And so I'm almost losing my train of thought. So long story short, I was disappointed that this movie seemed to be sort of wiping that away and saying, like, that's not how the box works. That, anyone can solve it and anyone can be taken by the Cenobites. But then was, like, relieved because we find out that ultimately Pinhead really wants Vought. That's who he's real, or she, I'm sorry, is. In the book, they are genderless. But that's who Pinhead is really after, because he's the one who really wants Pinhead to show up, not the girl, the main character.
Nice.
So I knew I was going to have to go on sort of a long rant about the lore.
I dig your rants.
But I do think, I don't know what you guys think about this, but like, I liked the fact that they kind of got around to that in a long, sort of made their way around to that by the end of the movie. But I was a little bit like, I felt like when they were in the haunted mansion and it's like it's all young people and they're being picked off like one by one by the Cenobites. And it felt kind of like we're sort of doing that like early 2000s kind of thing, you know? I don't know. What did you think? Did you? But then the mansion ended up being good because but then it was fine because of how it ended. That's what's so interesting and weird.
What do you think, T?
Well, like, for me, I'm really glad that they just went a different direction in regards to the way that they were telling the story. Because obviously, like, you're following the main actress, I'm trying to remember, Riley, yeah, she was the recovering addict. And in a lot of ways, this kind of reminded me quite a bit of, like, the Evil Dead remake, because that dealt with addiction fairly heavily, too. So her, like, entire arc in this story, like, she's already a tortured soul as it is, so, like, she didn't need to, like, have that reward at the end, because she's already, like, living her life full of guilt because of all the actions that, she was going through over the course of this entire movie. So the way that, like, her arc kind of progressed, I was really happy with. But I have to say, like, for the most part, like, I laughed so hard. Obviously, like, a lot of people are like, well, this movie wasn't just horny enough for like the nature of the movie. And, I could kind of understand that, but I laughed so hard after, like, she's hooking up with her boyfriend and she's walking out and, like, her brother and her roommates are, like, all having, like, dinner, basically. And, of course, you have the tension between the brother and the guy who's fucking his sister, right out of the gate. And as soon as he leaves, here's fucking.
Yeah, we can all hear you.
But when I was watching the Hellraiser, though, this is it was, like, so random, because, like, I was streaming it, like, through my laptop onto the TV, because, like, our Hulu, for whatever reason, isn't working on, like, our smart TV. So I had it hooked up with the HDMI cord. And then, like, an hour and a half into the movie, it was actually, like, pretty close to, like, when they were getting to the mansion towards the third act of the movie. Like, the TV just randomly turned off. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So I'm like, well, that's weird. I checked, the power of the TV. I tried the remote, nothing was working. I checked, like, the outlet, make sure that was fine, which it was. Our surge protector just completely went out. Like, all of the outlets that was on it were completely shut. So I don't know what the fuck happened. Like, it wasn't like there was no, like, storm or anything, but the thing just, like, shit out on us. And I have never had that happen with any power surge I've had.
Nice. Haunted
power surge.
I was like, Jesus Christ, that's a power.
Well, going back to Riley, there's a little bit of I guess there's some people that didn't really connect with her character because she wasn't incredibly likable and whatnot, and just from some of the other reviews. But I hope it's not exactly a trope, but I really kind of appreciate when they kind of mix addiction with horror. So then you have like a recovering addict dealing with a horror situation, and how their previous struggles sort of tend to be a sort of a life skill that helps them through the current trauma. And I thought that was, that was incorporated into this, and I don't know, I like that story. Like, it's a little heavier, and it's a little, I don't know, like I was rooting for her for sure, and you can sort of understand that her losing her brother was like the catalyst of her, basically rejecting both. Well, I don't know if she's rejecting her addiction, but definitely rejecting the idea that she can sort of bring him back, and that her life will be whole again, because he was basically the only reason she was trying to, do better, was to try to sort of salvage that relationship. So I dug it.
Yeah. So they did try to do some character development with her, which was cool. Like, I liked how they did, she was like a recovering addict, I think an alcoholic maybe, or well, kind of everything.
It was Pales.
And then they were like, oh, are you drinking? Like, because she'd kind of been drinking a little bit, hanging out with the guy. And also they showed how she, like, the sex that does happen in the movie is her basically having sex with him as sort of like a replacement for drugs and alcohol, where she's like, I
can't give everything up.
And it kind of plays into that whole wanting experiences that are sort of beyond just like just the regular, not that like sex is so extreme, but like her with like the drugs and alcohol, where she kind of like, they were, I think, kind of like having it be a little like that was, although she wasn't a super like needy, like wanting all these extreme experiences.
Right. It was just like Band-Aids, basically. I don't know. I definitely like the fact that they didn't go with the cliche of all of her friends finding out that it's her fault that they're dying. Did you guys notice that nobody figured it out?
Disappeared.
Yeah, well, like, it's her fault. Well, it's not her fault that her brother got sucked into the whole mess, but it is her fault that she didn't tell everybody exactly what was going on and they should run away. Yeah. And so all of her friends are getting picked off, and then she just keeps moving forward, because at that point she's still thinking that she can bring back her brother. So she continues to move forward with her half-baked plan, and then and her friends don't find out. I was like, wow, all right, got away with that one.
And that was kind of the thing, was that she was kind of being used by Pinhead to kind of keep that moving forward, where we find the twist that her boyfriend, it worked.
Right, he was in on it. Although he was still liked her, though. So that I love you that he blurts out while they're having sex, that kind of freaks her out, was genuine, I guess. Because at first, when I saw that he was like a double agent, I was like, oh, okay, so maybe he was just trying to play her still. But I guess, considering how the movie ended, then it was genuine affection that he felt for her, although he didn't completely disavow Voight either. Mm-hmm. But then managed to help out with the plan at the end. So.
It's hard to say how much he knew, because he definitely was being paid to get the box into her hands. Because that we find, that's one of the sort of twists at the end, is that it was intentional that she ended up with it. But they kind of do show that, like, all these characters are young and don't really have, like, steady jobs or, like, careers, and money is, like, an issue. And so he, on one hand, he may have only done it because he was getting a bunch of money to do it, and maybe he thought, like, well, it's just this box. Yeah. Like, it's not a big deal.
Right.
But then on the other hand, they do kind of show that he knows there's some that
he has a little bit of understanding of the supernatural elements of the box. Yeah.
One of the funny things in it, before we find out that he's a bad guy, is whenever she tries to hand him the box or get him involved, he's like, I'm not touching it. I don't want to. And I thought that was funny at first, because it's like, it's kind of funny to have that character be like that, because in a traditional horror movie, he would have been like, oh, that's all BS, baby. Like, that's stupid. Like that kind of, like the jock, like sort of the asshole jock kind of character. But he was very like, I'm not getting involved with any of that supernatural stuff. I'm not touching any of that. But then we find out, though, it's because he basically kind of knew that it was bad. Or at least he suspected, because if a billionaire wants this thing because it's supernatural, then there must be something.
This is straight up Elon Musk's like alley. Like, this is exactly the kind of shit he would get into, right? I mean, if you were, if you had that many billions like chucked, I'm willing to bet that this is what you'd buy with it.
Oh, totally. Like, if you're like a billionaire and you're bored and you hear that there's some kind of like
experience
artifact that you can like get that might have something to it, like they're definitely gonna buy it.
As you're like eating like out of like Hitler's cereal bowl as you're researching like the box, because you can afford that kind of shit, and you're kind of a creep.
I just laughed though that like Riley didn't find it suspicious at all that the box was literally the only thing in the storage warehouse that was abandoned. It's like, it's such an obvious trap.
She should have come to the same conclusion that basically, if this thing is in here...
But she already doesn't make the best decisions, so...
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, too, that the other reason... I'll just get this one out quick. The other reason that I like the element of, like, putting a person who's addicted to substances into the movie was that it really gives a pass to a lot of red flags in the movie that... If it were any other person, you're like, really? You're not going to react to this? Mm-hmm. But because she's so under the influence, she even like tells herself, like, I've been hallucinating. Yeah. I've been seeing things. It's got to be this or this. I mean, and because she already has the experience of maybe having seen some of that in the past, but not with what she took. That was the only thing that she could say was like, this is the same dose that I took before. I've never seen shit before. But thinking that it still has something to do with her recovery and her relapse. So I don't know. I like that I've seen it before. You can call it a trope where, because you're under the influence, you walk past a lot of red flags. But I still kind of enjoy it because I think it's like it's a reasonable thing to expect out of a situation.
It's a real thing that people do in real life. Like, it's not one of those decisions that people make in horror movies where you're like, why would somebody do that? I think you literally just said that, but where it's like decisions that don't make any sense that only movie characters do, but at least like it does. And which, as you said, as you mentioned, the Evil Dead remake, that's exactly what they also do in the Evil Dead remake, where they're like, oh, is it the drugs that she's like having these experiences, or is there something actually happening? And then the other thing I was going to say, though, is it does actually kind of work. I was suspicious about, like, why isn't she suspicious about the box? But the thing that actually worked was that I think she says something about how she suspects that maybe this is some kind of artifact that's worth money. The box itself is, because you know how wealthy, you see stories in the news about how wealthy people illegally buy ancient artifacts.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Jerusalem, places like that. And
it's not hard.
Yeah, and so this could have been something like that, where basically
Hobby Lobby.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, Hobby Lobby. They probably have one of the boxes.
They probably have a fake box.
Which they took. This movie also feels more influenced by Hellraiser 2 than by Hellraiser 1. Because a lot of the expanded lore in this movie comes mainly from Hellraiser 2. Which I liked. It feels very comic booky to me, the expanded lore, where you see the actual spelled out, where on one hand I liked it, and on one hand I thought it was a little bit goofy. But
the book where all the configurations?
The different configurations.
Okay. I like that.
I know. It's like, in the previous movies, especially I'm mainly talking about the first two, the box just sort of changes shape as part of the process of solving it or whatever. they sort of take that and are like, no, like each shape is like a different specific thing. But where it had a label, there was the lament configuration, which is the actual box, and there was the Leviathan configuration.
That's the big one. That's the top one, or I guess the last one on the list, but the biggest one
and that's like pretty fun because that comes from Hellraiser 2. In Hellraiser 2, when they go to hell, it looks like in this movie where it's like a big stone labyrinth. That's from Hellraiser 2, and then in Hellraiser 2, there's a giant that Leviathan configuration. There's a giant version of that hovers over the labyrinth and like shines the black light on people, and then they have like horrible hallucinations. So I thought that was kind of cool in a way, but also sort of like it's that thing where like sometimes having things be sort of mysterious is cool, and sometimes if you over-explain things, it can be a little bit.
Well, you can't win with you, John.
I know.
Not enough lore, too much lore.
I know, but then it's funny that I did like it, though. It's the weird thing. I sort of liked it and thought it was a little off at the same time.
Okay. T, did you have anything to throw in?
Not really, but I am glad, like, right out of the gate, we did get to see the Leviathan configuration. Because that's when we got the initial sacrifice, when the chains really started to come into play right at the start. So I thought it was interesting to see, like, the final form, like, right out of the gate, and then we, over the course, saw the other figurations
I was
afterwards.
going to say that another superficial note would be that I kind of wish it was more gore. I kind of wish it was a little bit grosser.
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly light on the blood and gore. They have.
Well, it says they don't like show half the kills, like on screen.
Wait, they showed half of them. Oh,
well, yeah, no, they don't really show.
Oh, I see where like they get in the precarious situation, and then before they are actually killed, it cuts away. Yeah.
And you don't get. I think you get a brief skinless person, right, in the movie, because in the first two movies, one of the huge aspects of the story is the skinless, the person who is Uncle Frank. I think in both the first two, where he is reforming and is skinless, but they kind of did that.
He makes out with the.
Yeah, he makes out with her. The best. I love the best is when he is skinless, wearing a white suit with the blood soaking through, and he's smoking a cigarette in the second Hellraiser
Uncle
movie.
Frank's so cool.
I know. And he's that great actor from The People Under the Stairs.
Yeah!
He's awesome in those movies. Oh, no, sorry. Uncle Frank is different. It's the guy from People Under the Stairs is in Hellraiser, but he plays the dad who Uncle Frank puts his skin on.
I'm trying to think of the actor who played Uncle Frank.
Oh, they didn't do that in this movie, by the way.
What part?
There's no point at which somebody wears somebody else's skin. That's kind of a big theme in the first two movies. It's fine, but
it's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
But there isn't anybody wearing a skin suit in this movie. But
dear sirs, that was me typing
angry letter to.
No, it's only their skin becoming part of their suit.
But also, to go back to the lore really quick, they also really took the lore further with each configuration being related to like a wish that you could ask from the Cenobites, which was kind of interesting because the first two movies, basically everybody is sort of looking for ultimate pleasure from the Cenobites, but then they sort of expand it where you can bring somebody back from the dead, which is very like kind of video gamey, sort of
second level
RPG, like kind of like, oh, like you can bring this character back, but it's fine, it's cool. I shouldn't pick. But then you also have like the Leviathan, which is power, right? Where you get kind of ultimate power.
Well, that's where you become a Cenobite, right? So
right, which was cool, and that was another.
I did that.
Because it's similar to Hellraiser 2, where that doctor becomes a cenobite at the end of the movie, and they turn him into it. They turn this guy into Vaughn.
Now, does he have to walk around crucified the entire time? I mean, I'm not judging, but it just seems like it's going to be difficult for him to get around.
No, I'm sure it'll take him off, but it doesn't change the fact that it basically, like, like split his penis in half
And
like
split his
peeled all the skin
arms.
off, Yeah.
Down the middle. So
Give him a
that
big
they
old
kinda-
smile,
Yeah.
Joker style.
And they had somebody who got turned in. The doctor in the second Hellraiser, he gets the wire, like the piano wire across the face. They had somebody in this movie who got that.
There was a
Yeah.
pregnant Cenobite.
Oh, was there?
Yeah.
I was laughing so hard at that when we were watching it last night. It's like trying to like go through the gate, and then you start to like see the skin like peel back a bit, and Jess was like, "Oh my god, it's
I
drowning!"
don't even remember that.
I really want to meet
that.
Jess now. She sounds hilarious. But, that Cenobite didn't really do or say anything. You know how there's that
They're
scene,
one of the background ones.
right? Where they're walking through the doors. You got the one that has a stretched out face,
Yeah.
which still gets to me. That one's, in my opinion, is the scariest one. And then you've got, and then in just out of a corner, like comes out skinless with the full belly.
Oh,
And
wow,
she's holding
okay.
her belly.
Yeah.
And they're holding their belly. And then there was the little one who ended up getting really fast, the one that attacked. I don't know how to feel about the fast Cenobite, because, we like the slow, methodical.
Right.
And then he gets trapped in a door. I'm like, really, dude? You're like the worst Cenobite.
See, and that's the thing I kind of talked about earlier, where the Cenobites should be kind of regal. They shouldn't be chasing people and
Have a little
roaring.
dignity.
Yeah, they have dignity. It's like you can't run away from the Cenobites because they just sort of teleport to where you are.
Yeah,
You know?
and so I'm glad that you pointed out at the whole, like, it was all the scheme from the get-go, because when the Cenobites were trapped in the house, part of me was like, oh, cool, but then the other part of me was like, oh, all right. Like, I guess you can. Have we tried hitting them with your fists?
Yeah, exactly. It makes they should never be kind of weak or weakened.
Or easy to get at.
Yeah. That's the thing that's so cool about them in the first movies is that
they're a little bit more omnipotent kind of
thing. And they're indestructible. You can't escape from them.
Yeah.
It's like what's genius about the first Hellraiser is that the main character, Kirsty, she has like nothing to do with any of it. The only reason she gets caught up and that stuff is happening is because it just happens that her uncle is calling them, and they've moved into that house where he was doing all his rituals and stuff, where he was contacting the Cenobites. And so she kind of just stumbles into it. And the real people that are involved with Pinhead and them are people that who want to be involved. Like, they're people who are really bad, like evil people which
are fun to watch. Well, not let me rephrase that. Not fun to watch get tortured, but it's there's no moral ambiguity about watching what's going on, and not that you feel superior, but like, oh, they were bad people. Pass the popcorn,
right? And that's kind of why, like, I didn't like how at first I didn't like the way that she avoided being captured by them because she didn't get hit by the knife. But then her brother did, and he did get captured. That felt so like, that's not how the Cenobites work. But then, once they kind of wrapped up the story and we saw why they did it.
I like how, like, one tiny plot point just fixed it all for you.
Well, but that's also part of the problem, though, I think, is that it's almost like they pulled this little trick, the writers of the movie, where they sort of got their cake and had their cake and ate it too.
Cake for everyone.
They made this movie that's almost like a teen horror, like Nightmare on Elm Street movie, where Cenobites are coming after you and killing the young people in the haunted house kind of thing. But at the same time, keeping it this kind of like almost soap opera story, more like the originals, where it's like a soap opera of people cheating on each other, like the wife is cheating on the husband, and it's like wealthier people who want these kind of elite experiences, and it's not about monsters chasing teenagers. You know what I mean? But they sort of did both in this movie. And on one hand, they brought it around and made it a traditional Hellraiser story at the very end. But on the other hand, I do sort of criticize the movie for doing that kind of teen, the monsters are chasing the teens in the haunted house movie.
Yeah.
You know,
style.
So it's like, okay, like golf clap to the writers. You did a good job and you did it the right way, but I have to give a little bit of chastisement for having Cenobites chasing
Like
20-somethings
like
in a haunted house. Yeah. Applause on one hand and a chastising finger on the other for kind of doing like the cheesy thing and the cool thing at the same time, basically.
You're grading their paper a B plus.
I'm kind of
an A minus. There we go. There's got to be a minus in it.
I'm like right now, like I'm like the Star Wars fan talking about the new trilogy of Star Wars movies. Like I'm like taking it. I know I'm taking it probably too far in terms of like
that's what life is for, John. Take it far.
The lore, but like I do feel like the Star Trek fan who's like criticizing the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies.
I'm gonna follow the director on Twitter and give him hell.
Not my Cenobites.
Sorry. Oh, that's good.
Like just about dying over here. I will say, like, I think my favorite sequence in the entirety of the movie, at least visually, is when you have, the teens all trying to escape the mansion when they're inside the van, and basically they are trapping Nora at this point in time, and you kind of have like that slow, like, okay, I'm like drifting further and further apart from you, even though I'm like still here, but like she's like getting drawn back into the abyss, so to speak, by the priest. I thought that was amazingly done, and it really felt extremely isolated. Even though
although
she
I
was,
will say that was one of those times where I was like, "Really, you can't scream anymore?" Yeah. She was like, "Eh." Yeah. I'm like, "Really, Nora? Really? You're gonna go to hell? This is gonna be you for 1,000 years. That's how scared you are." Okay, all right, you do you.
And I think they only did once the chains coming out and grabbing. Was it twice? Yeah.
Nora and then the first guy at the very beginning.
Right, yeah, because they did need to. Because that's a pretty iconic part of the originals.
I use it a little bit. But yeah, they put a lot of, attractive people in the movie and then killed them. As a horror fan, there's not much more you can ask for.
The Cenobites are better. I mean, as crazy as that's like, it feels weird to say that. Out loud. It's sort of like, it's like saying out loud how Mad Max Fury Road is better than the Road Warrior because the Road Warrior is so iconic and that was the best Mad Max movie, but Fury Road is better.
It's pretty good.
This movie, as iconic as the Cenobites are in the first couple of movies, they're better in this movie. Just I think all of them are better than their predecessors. Except my thing though, okay, like we have to talk a little bit about the voice because obviously Doug Bradley is
right.
Pinhead is iconic and his voice is super iconic. And I was happy. I thought they did a good job with the new Cenobite's voice.
I did like that too. And then I also liked how they were a lot more expressionless. Let me rephrase that. I was watching some videos of the original Pinhead, and like when he would speak, his whole face is moving like a normal human being, mind you. But then I kind of thought that they did a better job of making sure their faces were like more still, more frozen, which I dug. Yeah. And I can't stop thinking about how pretty the new Cenobites are because there was the one that has the arch across like that,
where her skin is kind of pulled.
Yeah, but they've also got like pearls
Right, yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's nice. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, the pins, all the pins are
Not-
like pearl-ended pins. Even
Well, they're
on
actual
Pinhead,
pins,
too.
right? On Pinhead, right? But on this other one, they're not. Well, they might be pins. That's theoretically. Oh, not theoretically. Yeah, theoretically, that's what they are meant to be. I'm guessing, like pins, but they've got a pearl end cap on them,
Mhm.
which make them look really pretty. That's what I'm saying.
And
Bedazzled.
They were just,
and definitely
bedazzled.
the whole, as with kind of the first movie too, but even more so with this one, the whole kind of piercing culture and everything, they really it felt almost kind of more along the lines of what you would see with people that are really into piercing and that kind of stuff.
I will, something that we could probably talk a little tiny bit about is you mentioned a little bit about the BDSM of the first the original couple of movies. And I mean, that is something, and we even saw it in the People Under the Stairs, where you sort of inject a little bit of sexual horror into your movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I hate to say it like this, it really adds a spice. It really, and I think as a kid, that's what really freaked me out about it too, right? But that's something that this movie was really lacking. They didn't really go after the sort of weird sexual horror, that, is there a better word for it?
No. The only horror aspect was her boyfriend saying that he loves her, and that was probably the first time he said it too. Just with the
if you're doing a doggy style,
what?
That's time to say that.
Well, and that's kind of the thing is that in the first movie and the first two movies, it's mainly a sexual thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for that ultimate pleasure.
Stuff, yeah.
And this guy Vought is not looking for that. He, I think, is probably trying to go for the Leviathan configuration, the power.
I thought at first he wanted the sexual pleasure, but that's why he got sensation in that weird thing that rotated his nerves or something.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's true. Right. Which, of course, yeah, they did it as keeping him in intense pain all the time with that device that was constantly moving his nerve, winding his nerves and entrails.
Yeah, that was right.
That's right. So, yeah, he was going for sensation, and he just wanted to die.
Mm-hmm. Oh. And then he's like, I do like that part where he reveals, I built a cage about his house. And I was like, yeah, you did, buddy. Yeah, you did. You only did it in 6 years. Good job.
And that's what they did. I believe it's Hellraiser 4, I think, or maybe 3, where they built where it's Pinhead in space. And they built that space station, which is also meant to be a trap for Pinhead to capture him in there. And
I haven't seen that one. I might have to check it out. How many movies are there?
Too many. There's 8 or 9 or something crazy.
Oh, that's too many. I think I've only seen 4.
Yeah, no. The only thing good about that one with the Pinhead in space is that there's a storyline that comes from one of the comics from the 90s about the original guy who built the box in the first place.
Oh, neat.
He was a French toy maker, and he carved the original
wood.
The original box, and then and it kind of tells his backstory. And there's a cenobite named Angelique in that story. There's a cenobite in this movie that looks a lot like that cenobite, but I don't think they ever said her name. But I was kind of wondering if that cenobite might be this Angelique character from one of the other ones.
I just drank this whole thing, so I gotta go take care of that. I'll be right back.
Yeah. But so another thing I want to bring up too is the woman cenobite who is sort of Pinhead's almost the right hand, to use a weird term, right hand man, even though she's a woman, to Pinhead. In the original movie, she has her neck split open and it's held open. And then they kind of had her in this movie, but her whole kind of neck and everything was much more split open, I think, and held open. But I do have to say, I really loved her voice in the original Hellraiser, because she's the one, she talks a lot in the first movie. She has such a great voice in that movie, and I sort of missed that a little bit, even though they did a good job with Pinhead's voice. This other one, I was like, I do. She's almost equally iconic in a way, not as much as Pinhead, but she's really good. And then they did not have a Butterball cenobite. You know Butterball?
Is he the one with the little glasses?
Yeah, where his
the
his eyes were moved and he has little like things, and he's kind of he's like a bigger guy.
He's a husky fella.
Yeah, he's a husky cenobite. They didn't have a husky cenobite in this one.
Well, they have the face stretcher. I don't know what his name is, but freak me the fuck out.
And maybe they didn't want to go there with this movie, but you know how the cenobites sort of represent different sort of vices or things that you could like be into.
Because I thought you could only like become. I thought if the Leviathan configuration means you become a cenobite, that means you were always going for power. Although your thing would explain that really weak one that runs really fast.
But it's sort of that's sort of the monkey paw thing, because you know they're thinking when they want ultimate power. Yeah. They're going to get, like, worldly power, but then the Cenobites are like, well, actually, we're just going to make you into a Cenobite.
You get to see all the dimensions. Isn't that fun?
But that's new lore for this movie, because the Dr. Channard in Hellraiser 2 he gets turned into a Cenobite, but it has nothing to do with, they don't specify about the Leviathan configuration or anything like that. They just make him into a Cenobite because he's so cruel and he's done so much evil stuff at his hospital with his patients that they're just like, we're going to make you a Cenobite because you're already basically a Cenobite.
You're halfway there, buddy.
Yeah. And he was...
We're just going to do
come play Mortals with us.
And he was awesome. I don't know if you guys... Do you guys remember Hellraiser 2? Have you seen it?
No.
But they...
I don't think that's the story I remember.
He turns blue and they put like piano wire over his face, like, and stretch it over his face. And then he has this like worm attach itself to the top of his head that has a drill that goes into his brain and like scrambles his brains. And then the worm sort of carries him around by his head. He was a great new Cenobite that they never used after that movie again. No. He didn't. I was really bummed that he didn't appear in the third.
Dear sirs.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where you set up Dr. Channard in Hellraiser 2? Where is he?
Sincerely, not my Cenobites.
Not my Pinhead. But no, but yeah, no, I did kind of appreciate, though. I did like that extra lore. They they sort of make it a little too gamey, but it's also cool at the same time. It's fun. Okay, so overall question though. How rewatchable is the movie? I mean, I know you've already seen it twice, T. Like I said, I like so many things about it, but I do feel like, I want to rewatch it. Okay. I've only watched it once, and I do want to rewatch it again. I do feel that this, to me, I'll say this is the best. Hellraiser 1 and 2 are the best, and then this is the next best one. Oh, neat. That's pretty good. I think this beats every other sequel besides the second one. And I'm, like, straightforward comparing it to 1, because now I said I'd watch, like, 3 or 4, but now that I think about it, I thought I'd watch 2, but then you just told me the whole plot, and I haven't watched number 2. There is a 1990s Hellraiser, I forget if it's 3 or 4, where one of the Cenobites has CDs in his head. Dude, it's literally terrible. Can we please watch that? Oh, fucking CDs. There's one that has 8 tracks. Talk about dated. I know. The 1970s Cenobite with 8 tracks in his head. Oh, that's too bad. And Farrah Fawcett, like, skin hair. That'd be great.
Yeah, in regards to, like, rewatchability, I think as a standalone movie, I think it's probably higher. I think it's, like, as an overall Hellraiser, like, I agree with John. Like, I also put it in that order. I also haven't necessarily seen some of, like, the later sequels. I just know, like, once it went, straight to VHS to DVD, obviously the overall quality went, down the drains, as you should come to expect with that one. But I think in regards to like if you're looking for a more like visually driven story, or like this one is gonna hold up pretty well over the course of time. But it's just those differences compared to the original, because so many people are gonna compare them 1-to-1. When really, like, they weren't trying to retreat too much to the original, because they wanted to take things in their own direction, whether it was the lore, whether it was with the cenobite looks. And like for the most part, like outside of that, like we also had different looks in regards to like you had one cenobite who was like bleeding from her eyeballs. You had the other one who really had like almost like a breathing problem because of the way that she was flayed, which
I really enjoy like just
as well.
taking pausing and taking a deep look at how they're fashioned, if only because the idea is that everything that's done to them is done in such a way to have the most to produce the most pain, basically. So, like for example, like you can imagine, like from the original, like the one with the exposed throat, and like thinking of like speaking or having just wind hit that. This must be pretty painful. But no, I agree. Like they're a lot of fun. John went to the bathroom. It was his turn. There you go. Yeah, we gotta rotate.
Yeah, gotta rotate things. Yeah. Yeah, but I think for most people, like if you saw The Night House, you probably had very high expectations for this movie, because a lot of people really enjoyed The Night House, myself included. So, like, even though I had like really high expectations for this, I still felt it delivered. I wouldn't say it was too much of a letdown. It's just I think like the first half of the movie and then the second half of the movie do feel a little, of a disconnect, just because, you have the whole addiction story, then you have, what we dubbed like the teenage funhouse in regards to like the mansion, slasher aspect where they're getting picked off one by one. But in the end, it all came full circle. The Cenobites, got their final sacrifice. They got their replacement, so to speak, in Voight. So I thought like that was a really great way to end it. But just seeing the guy's penis get flayed like that, man, that definitely was not the best way to end it.
The visuals were really outstanding. I mean, like you can't say enough good things about that whole creative team that worked on those. Those were so incredible. But yeah,
and these Cenobites are also more in line with what
the comics you were saying.
Well, not the comics, but Clive Barker's an artist himself, and he drew the Cenobites. He drew a bunch of different drawings of different types of Cenobites.
Clive Barker is such a force.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the Cenobites in this really looked like they were taken directly from some of his drawings, which is really cool, because the original Cenobites are based on his drawings as well, but they like you mentioned, they sort of had to not make them as extreme as the drawings, because probably for budgetary reasons.
Right.
They probably realized, we gotta.
I think I'm always going to be a little harsh on like sequels, because even though my brain knows that there's no way they can recreate the same feelings that the originals brought out, my heart still kind of hopes. And then I watch it and you're like, well, I wasn't completely horrified. I didn't pee my pants. So I guess that wasn't great. So I don't know. I think I'll always be a little harder on sequels, but it's a really solid movie.
Well, yeah, just to talk about Hellraiser in general, Hellraiser stands out from other horror movies, almost all other horror movies in a way, because of the fact that it's not Freddy Krueger or Jason or Michael Myers or any of these other monsters, Chucky, who are just like, they see a person and they want to kill a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't matter. These are monsters that run around killing things. Like that. This is totally different. Like the Cenobites don't go around chasing people. You call them and they had
it coming.
Yeah, it's like they're the elite monsters. They're
the cool monsters.
They're the cool monsters, especially in the first two more so than this one, it's like the people involved in the story are kind of like these like not teenagers or like younger people. These are like adults having adult problems. Like in the first movie, it's the
I have
wife.
adult problems.
Totally. The wife is cheating on the husband with the brother. It's like a soap opera, the first movie.
Yeah.
You could almost pull the supernatural elements out of it, and you would just have like this kind of supernatural, you would have like a regular thriller of this wife who's like murdering people for her lover. And they have this really extreme relationship with each other.
It did look pretty hot.
And that really like sets. And then in the second movie, you have this doctor who has a whole wing of patients that he's sort of messing with and experimenting with.
So it's this just sort of like elevated like level of victims, like quote unquote victims, right? Because they're all highly intelligent, successful in their lives for the most part,
right?
And just searching for that sort of like unattainable like high. Or whatever you want to call it.
Right. And exactly, like the experience, even what the goals of the characters are these sort of extra next level things.
Right. Like their earthly desire. I mean, they might go to the box for some pleasure, but really it's like an addict chasing a high where there's no amount of pleasure that's ever going to satisfy them, which is why they're going to the box. But really what they're going for is something like that itch that they can't scratch. And they don't care about other people. They don't care about relationships really.
It's like there's a great documentary.
They're ready to move on. There we go.
Yeah, to the next level, to things.
They're ready to level up in evil.
They're going after things that can't just be gotten by the average person.
Not even by money. Yeah.
It's like there's a great documentary about the reality of the Playboy Mansion and Hugh Hefner, and it's sort of like. What it's like for a person like Hugh Hefner, who can experience and do everything he wants, he's going to reach a point where he wants to go to the next level with his experiences. Yeah. Because with his money and power, he can basically do things that the average person can't, but even that's not enough for him, and he has to go further. And that's where the Cenobites come in.
At the Playboy Mansion.
Exactly. Coming for Hugh Hefner.
I can just imagine Hugh Hefner making all his little bunnies trying to, play with the box. Yeah.
Hugh's probably a Cenobite now.
I believe it.
But and that's kind of cool. Like that really like separates it from a lot of other stuff.
It's like higher. I mean, it's not just your straightforward kind of like hit you over the head, kind of dumb, straightforward horror movie. It's a more elevated experience too. The freaking movies are an elevated experience.
And you get those great stories of it's like people are sneaking around behind each other's backs, lying to each other, and then even escaping. Yeah, like Uncle Frank figures out how to escape.
How the fuck did he escape from there? That's insane.
And that's the thing. And maybe another little complaint with this movie and that the other movies is that desire is like it's more like sort of esoteric. The original Hellraisers, Frank is able to escape from hell because what's her name, who he's cheating with, the wife. Her desire for him is so strong that when his brother cuts himself and the blood goes on the floor of the attic, Frank is able to sort of regenerate from his blood and escape hell because what's her name wants him back like so bad and he wants to get out. It's all sort of like, it's not like these literal rules of like follow this text and this will happen. It's more just like the desire. They want it so bad that they're able to make it happen and things happen because of that desire.
Nice.
I'm getting.
You get worked up.
I'm getting worked up. But and I saw David Goyer.
You want to LaCroix?
One of the writers of this movie, and he's pretty good. Oh, and you mentioned the director, The Night House, which is great. I did not realize until just recently, too, that he also did The Signal back in early 2000s.
Did he do The Ritual?
Did he?
Is that the one about the hikers in like Norway?
That's a good one.
It's a great movie. Yeah!
Oh, nice. That's a great movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
stuff.
really good. I didn't. It's funny when you
I just want to
realize
know.
you're a fan of someone and you didn't know you were a fan of them. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I like all his movies. The Signal was great. I remember seeing that back when it came out, and it was really unique and had a really cool, original story.
And I'm a big fan of The Ritual. Good shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ritual's great. I love the monster in the Rituals. The monster is
Big
so
bad
great,
monster,
and it has the front of it looks like a body, like a person, and it has eyes like where the eyes should be.
No, it's so bad.
It's such a great creature in that movie. And it looks like a deer. I love how it looks sort of like an elk or like a deer too. It's so cool. But yeah,
good job, director.
Yeah,
whose name I've already forgotten.
I know. Yeah, I don't know his name either. David
Bruckner.
Yeah,
it's David Bruckner. Wow. But yeah, so outside of that, obviously, like, comparing it to the original, I think a lot of people's interest is going to revolve around Jamie Clayton's performance as Pinhead in this movie. And, right out of the gate, if one of your concerns is Jamie's role in this, it should not be one of your concerns. Her performance compared to, like, say, what we got with The Nightmare on Elm Street, remake.
With, what's his name?
Night and day difference.
That casting I was happy with when they announced it. The guy who plays Rorschach in I forget his name, who they cast to play Freddy. I was like, that's pretty cool casting. I'm down with that. But then, the movie was just blah. But right, no, she does a great job. The voice is done well, and it's funny because. She has this, a lot of times kind of has this subtle look on her face, like she's sort of subtly amused by what's happening.
Like when Chatter got stabbed.
Mm-hmm. And I was like...
It's my favorite part.
And that was another one of those things where I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about like the way she's acting.
Yeah.
But then when I realized that it was she was basically the puppet master and was like manipulating things, I was like, oh, okay. It actually totally makes sense because she's sort of amused with herself because she's playing her little games.
Although I'm guessing the Chatter killing Chatter was a surprise, which is probably a pleasant surprise because they probably know everything cenobites. So if you can surprise them, you're going to make them happy. But yeah. And again, when Chatter finally bit down an arm, I'm like, finally. Using those teeth for something.
Well, and the kind of cool thing about that too is that at least my interpretation was that Pinhead sort of chose the main character she sort of chose her because she probably knew about her life and sort of recognized some qualities in her, and she was like, I'm going to pick you because I think you're going to succeed at getting me what I want, which is getting Vogue back. And so she sort of, there's a few moments here and there where Pinhead sort of allows her to continue on. Like you can tell there were a few times where it was like, oh, Pinhead probably should just take her and she thinks she's going to be taken. But then Pinhead sort of just like, no, you keep... Like, I'll allow it.
Let's see it play out. Yeah, I'll allow it.
When Chatterer gets killed, she's like, all right. She's like, okay, I'll allow you that one. You were clever enough to come up with that. I'll allow
that scene totally woke me up, too, because I'd gotten a little comfortable on the couch and, about to reach for my phone. And then Chatter gets it, and I'm plugged back in. Mm-hmm. So that was good.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like Pinhead was like bartering almost with her. It's like, all right, well, it doesn't have to necessarily be, your blood. It could be this person's blood or, whoever. As long as the sacrifice is made,
that's all
that
really seemed like at the very end that Pinhead was kind of pleased with her, the main character. And so she was like, now you get to choose one, you get your wish and get to choose. And of course, she chooses the lament configuration without realizing it.
And that was hilarious. The Cenobites were like, "Oh, you picked the worst one. It's so boring. I bet you're gonna regret this." That was really great.
But I have to say, I'm okay with how they wrapped up the story, but a little bit though I do have to complain that her brother does get basically captured by the Cenobites.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So is he just like trapped in a hell being tortured forever?
Well, so they have her say this line where she goes,
I know
when she, yeah, I know he's home.
Gone.
Like, and she says something about him being home, like meaning, I think I interpret it as meaning like he's
heaven or some shit. Is he though?
But exactly, that's the thing though. Is he? Because he got captured by the Cenobites because they got him with the sticker.
Yeah, that means he gets like poked and stretched and cut and peeled and.
Well, and they were using him as, they captured him to use him as a pawn to get her.
But they still got him.
Do the thing. But they got him. So it feels a little bit like a cheat. Like the writers were like, we'll have her say, he's home, he's okay, and she'll choose the lament.
And they'll just forget.
Right.
that he's getting tortured.
And also, I'm a little bit unhappy with that, too, because he ended up in that position. At first, it feels like he ended up in that position because of her, because she was messing with the box. It was supposed to stick her, it didn't, and it stuck him, and he got taken. Now, we find out that was all Pinhead's plan, just to make things happen. But it doesn't. That still doesn't change the fact, that he's still basically captured, and
he's suffering.
It's kinda, sorta within the main character's power. It's sort of her fault, but not really. But it is within her power to get him back, and so.
But he's not gonna come back. Like, it might be even worse than that.
It's the monkey's paw.
Yeah, I feel like the further, the more you ask for, the worse it gets. Like, because I guess there's a Lazarus configuration, but who the fuck knows what that's gonna look like?
And I guess thinking about it now as we talk about it, the Lazarus configuration is does actually sort of fit in the lore because, of course, as we've seen, Uncle Frank is able to come back, but he doesn't. They don't specify that in the previous movies. But Uncle Frank is able to come back twice in the movies. Or it's Julia. That's her name, the wife.
That's right.
Julia comes back in the second movie, and Frank comes back in the first movie. So there is sort of that precedent for the Lazarus thing, although...
Is it, though, the Lazarus thing? Because I'm not... Well...
Not technically, because that doesn't exist in the
So who knows what it actually looks like, and it might have been something horrifying.
Again, they come back because of the desire of the person who wants to bring them back. And it's the mix of the box, but it's also the intent of the person doing it. And so the wish, having it be in this movie like a wish, like, you've solved the box and now you get your wish and you can bring back, is like, that's definitely not how it worked in the other ones, but I guess, new lore, new rebooted series, new lore.
Yeah, nothing wrong with a little new lore.
Mm-hmm.
Not much Cenobites.
And it does, doing all this new lore does set them up to be able to do sequels and things. And I hope they do this. I hope the sequels are kind of like each independent stories, and not following the same characters or the same things, but have whole new situations.
But it's definitely left that way. I mean, the cube was left out in the open, an abandoned mansion that still has functioning lights.
Which, also to point out real quick, I was like, oh my god, this is so dumb that this mansion was just left intact, abandoned.
Right, but the guy was still there. Yeah.
And there's no security or anything.
It was a trap.
I was like, that's so dumb. But it was a trap, and so I was like, okay, fine.
I felt that way about it too. I was like, oh, the lights work.
Yeah, exactly. And there's zero cameras or security at all.
Yeah. Like, and then I'm like, oh, and there's like these metal things work. But then you're like, oh, wait, it wasn't there from the get-go. That was just built in the last 6 years. It should be working perfectly.
But yeah. Again, it's sort of like, it's that like, it's like even though they justify it and explain it in a good way at the very end of the movie.
There was a lot of moments when you were like, ugh.
Yeah, the fact that it does that and it goes for that long without justifying it or explaining it is still not great. Like, that's why I can see why people are criticizing this movie, because I could imagine people sort of checking out halfway in or 3/4 of the way and just being like, I know what this movie is. This is dumb.
I got your number.
Yeah, exactly. I know how this is going to end. Like, blah, blah, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and not sticking around to the very, very end and realizing, oh, okay. Which, in fairness, like we're saying, like, I get it. Like, in fairness, it's like I can actually understand why people kind of are having that reaction to the movie. Because it's like they do wait until the last 10 minutes of the movie to be like, haha, it was all I planned from the beginning. Wow.
And you're like, really? Really? But yeah, that was, well, I've had a really fun podcast, even though it was a little meh about the movie, although generally I liked it. It's been a lot of fun talking about it. And it's been a lot of fun about getting your take on that, John. You really know your Clive Barker.
Yeah, I really liked the first Hellraiser when it came out, and his short stories and stuff. I don't know if you guys have ever read the Books of Blood, but those are really good books.
You sound like you even have his cookbook, so I think you're a verified fan.
But I've even played his video game. I think it's called Undying or something like that. But he had a video
Was
game
it a
back
Nintendo?
in the 90s. PC.
Oh, that was PC game. All right.
Yeah, it's like a 90s. You can still actually buy it even today.
Was it good?
It's okay.
How many hours?
Oh, not that. I like a couple. Not that much.
Like a couple? That's it?
I played it a little bit. It's a 90s like sort of RPG first person game, so it's kind of janky.
Oh yeah.
But it's also kind of cool. You know, it's like
lots of repeating like brick walls that you're walking by,
and really weird rough graphics. And
yeah,
it's like, but it's okay. It's all right. You can probably buy it for like $1.
Probably bootleg it, right?
Yes,
that's probably the only way you can get it. To tell you the truth.
I wouldn't be surprised if they make sequels to this though, because it seems
sure.
like it's generally
maybe.
And also, it seems like that's the way of the world these days. Nothing but sequels. You know, so
yeah. This really is like the Evil Dead. Like it feels in a lot of ways like that Evil Dead remake, because the Evil Dead remake got a lot of negative reviews, but I think it's a legitimately good movie. I think the Evil Dead reboot and this reboot have the same problem where they're both legitimately good movies, but they have the problem of having a super famous IP name attached to them, which raises the standard that they're going to be judged by like 10 times as much as if this were just like its own thing. If this were its own thing and nobody had ever heard of Hellraiser and this was the first Hellraiser movie, people would be like, this movie's awesome, oh my god, it's so cool. But the fact that was the door.
I literally don't know who that is. That might be a cenobite. Everybody I know is in this room.
And same with Evil Dead. Evil Dead's a great movie, but the fact that it's Evil Dead, everybody's like, oh well, it's not as good as
and that's the gamble,
That's one of the reasons why they had to up the gore so much with the Evil Dead remake. I mean, they needed a reason to really stand out. That's why they kept leaking a lot of like those behind the scenes shots well ahead of when the movie was actually coming out. Very similar to like the Piranha 3D movie when that was coming out too. But for the most part, obviously, like this is a very storied franchise, and next week is going to be a little bit more of the same because we have Halloween Ends, which is what we're going to be doing next week on the podcast. And I've avoided the spoilers. All I basically know is the director basically said this is going to be his season of the witch. Now, take that for what it is. It's going to go in some different directions, and it might not entice everyone, and it might not be for everyone. And we'll see for ourselves what
I'm
exactly
really
that is
excited
going
to
to
see
mean in regards
Jamie
to
Lee
the way
Curtis. I
that
think
Halloween
that
is.
recently she's been doing a little bit of. I mean, let me rephrase that. The things that I've heard from her recently, which isn't a lot, but every once in a while you'll come across something on social media like, "Oh, Jamie Lee Curtis, blah 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 blah,"
Mm-hmm.
and it just sounds like she's giving less fucks about just about everything. So it's kind of exciting to think if that's going to seep into the character, which would make a lot of sense. And just kind of see a grittier, rougher, more badass version, which she's already really badass, but it's going to be even more so. So I'm excited to see that.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. She was great in that, not the last Halloween, but the one before. I forget what that was called, but she was really good in that one where she was kind of like turning the tables on Michael Myers, and they did the iconic shot of like from the first movie where he falls off the balcony and then he's suddenly not there anymore, and they do that with her in the remake. That was all really fun. That was cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's awesome.
And I get the inkling that it's going to be more of a defeated Jamie Lee Curtis, emotionally, that is.
So wait, is Michael Myers in this one?
I don't know.
He is. He
is the movie.
But if
right?
they're saying, because Season of the Witch, of course, did not have Michael Myers in it.
Unless you count Baby Myers, I guess. I don't know.
Was he? But isn't Season of the Witch the one that's all about the masks that turn people into whatever? Like, I forget what. It's weird. It's actually like an interesting movie, but I haven't seen it.
Oh, I thought that was Baby Michael Myers for some stupid reason. Whoops.
No, this is the one where it's about the company that makes Halloween masks, and when you put them on, they like fuse to your face and turn you like they kill you or something.
I don't think we're talking about the same movie. I think I'm talking about another movie. Sorry.
Well, no, because that's the weird thing about Season of the Witch is that it's like the one Halloween movie that's radically different.
Is that the Rob Zombie one?
No, that's the later one.
That's the one I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
No.
Was the Rob Zombie one the one where Laurie turns the tables, or that's the one after? That's the Rob Zombie one.
Yeah, the Rob Zombie one was like in like early lore kind of stuff, I believe.
And not the Buster Rhymes one either, which came out in the early 2000s. The Buster Rhymes song.
90s and early 2000s. What a mess.
Dude, that was a dark. The
dark
early
time
2000s was a dark time for horror. It really was.
But now we're in the golden age of horror.
That was the era where people considered Jeepers Creepers to be the best horror movie.
I hate that movie.
Yeah, I think
when people are saying Jeepers Creepers is the best horror movie out, there's a problem.
I don't want to start shit, but luckily, like, we've only got like so many subscribers. Am I the only one that doesn't like Justin Long?
I'm on the fence about Justin Long. I don't like him.
I don't hate him, but I'm like, how is he famous? I don't understand.
I like the Sam Raimi movie, Drag Me to Hell.
Yes,
but he's definitely kind of not.
He was great in that though. Like
he's good,
his character, and then there's Tusk. I don't hate his movies, but
it's. I think people hate him because of those "I'm a Mac, I'm a PC" commercials that he was in. Remember those from the early 2000s?
I guess the reason is like maybe it's jealousy because I'm like, you're super average. How come I'm not famous like you? So maybe it's jealousy. Maybe it's that. Maybe I'm just a horrible person.
God, now that it's like all these remakes. I'm going to predict it right now because we're wearing the shirts, but I feel like when is it seems inevitable that we're going to get a Reanimator reboot or remake. I mean, how is that not happening? How has that not been announced?
I know, right?
That's going to be crazy. If they do that, they're really going to have to nail the casting of Herbert West.
Dear sirs.
I mean, if they don't get Herbert West right.
Evan Peters. Peter V. Evans. I forget how his name. He's the new Dahmer.
Oh, yeah.
He'd be awesome.
He could. That's true. It would have to be sort of, somebody similar. Yeah, he could do that.
He could definitely do that.
Nice. And then Dan, who would be Dan Kane? I could kind of be anyone in a lot of ways, really. Be like Chris Evans.
Yeah. I love Chris Evans.
Or who's the other Chris from Guardians of the Galaxy?
Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt. It'll be Chris Pratt as Dan K.
Yeah, what happened with that? Like,
Well, people already have it out for Chris Pratt after that Mario. The
'cause
Mario
he's
trailer
actually
dropped, and
using
everyone's like,
his celebrity
"Wait, that's
to
his
sell
voice?"
Mario, right? That's the whole point. Well, right.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Well,
more
they-
so it sounds nothing like
he
Mario.
did really well in the Lego
And he's
movie.
just like using his
Everybody
Chris
loved him
Pratt
there.
voice.
Did he? Who did he play?
Wasn't he like the lead in the Lego movie?
Was he like Batman or something?
I think so.
Oh.
Yeah, right? I can't remember who he played, but I do remember that he was the lead and then everybody loved him.
I have no idea.
It was kind of funny. I don't know what happened to that dude though. Everybody went from loving him to hating him, and I'm not exactly sure why. So
He has a well, not to get too, but he's a member of a church that's like has.
I think I heard something like that.
Some
the
things
tea.
going on. Is the tea on that? Yeah. And he's like, I don't believe in that stuff, but he,
But I go to church every week.
But
I
it's
give them all
like
my money.
it's this one specific. I can't remember the name of it, but it's this specific church.
That's all it is too. Because I wondered. I mean, I heard about that. I just didn't think it was like a big enough deal to be like. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
That's
for sure.
True. I mean,
there's that too. For
Well,
sure.
I mean,
Could just be fatigue too, because he's been in a lot of
Parks and
stuff.
Rec and Guardians of the Galaxy, like we were all in love with him, right?
Yeah.
And then like he buffed up for Guardians of the Galaxy, so we were all like, oh my goodness,
Yeah, for
like
me,
that was quick.
It's fatigue for me for
Fatigue?
sure. Yeah,
That's how I feel about
he's in everything. He's in
yeah.
everything, and especially I really don't. I like him obviously in Guardians of the Galaxy and that stuff, but I don't like him in the Jurassic Park movies. I don't like any of those new Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
movies.
me. I want to see the new one because I haven't seen it yet. Where they bring everybody back, but I heard it was bad too. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. It was basically an excuse to bring as many dinosaurs onto the screen as they can. I enjoyed it more than the one they did prior to that, but like the first half of it kind of feels like a James Bond movie because they do like these really weird things with like action sequences and like trying to steal something. It was really bizarre.
So Halloween, it's Halloween Ends. Are they really
We've hit the
trying
mark. We've hit an hour and 30 minutes. Okay, we can wrap it up.
Okay. Are they really trying to claim that this is the last Halloween?
I think they're saying that that's the last one with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's the one with the trilogy.
It's the last one for the trilogy.
She's definitely probably retiring. Unless they give her a whole
bunch of money
to come back for another one.
Retirement's expensive these days, so she might just keep making them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just need to bring my girl Danielle Harris.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I'm excited
really
for the rest of the month, and I'm excited for November. I'm stoked that we're doing all new stuff. So, although lots of competition with the reviews online, by the way. So
after Halloween Ends, is that when it's the Spirit Store one?
Or is that Sissy? Or is that the Midnight Club? Or is that... I took a screenshot.
You guys not even remember at this point? You took a screenshot and it just got buried.
Spirit Halloween
it's Spirit Halloween on the 19th.
Okay, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, it's Halloween Ends and then
I
Spirit
feel
Halloween
like we
for the rest of the month
kind of made T do the Halloween Spirit Store
Yay!
one.
I'm excited. Oh my god! And now going to a Spirit Halloween store is gonna feel like going and doing the experience.
I mean,
It is.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I just know like it's gonna be more of a family horror movie, which I'm fine with. Like it definitely has Goosebump vibes to it, so I'm excited to check. Yeah,
the trailer,
and it's literally classified as a family movie. And
I was like,
okay.
It might still be fun.
But yeah, it could still be fun. I enjoyed that one that was about the young adult author horror. What was the one where it's Gory? Is that his name? Edward Gorey or something. What was the one where it's the short
little
stories.
Girl who's written. No, wait.
It's short stories and there's the Scarecrow one.
Oh, Tales to still stay in the dark? Or
Yeah.
that's what
where
the
it's like
Guillermo
young
del Toro.
adult family.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
No, that one is.
That's something else.
It was something that came
else.
out a few years, but that one was a family kind of young adult one and was actually pretty cool. It wasn't too bad, so maybe this will be good.
Yeah, and if it's not, we can talk about that too.
Exactly, because exactly.
I still don't have a costume.
We can
If
talk
it's
about.
not, we'll just talk about our costumes.
Which I'm going to
by
probably
the way.
get a costume at the spirit store, so it'll be meta because I'll actually have a spirit store.
We might be doing a band costume too,
Yeah,
because we're performing on the 29th at a house party, so nobody else is invited. But Joe's he's like, we need a band costume. I'm like, okay. We might all be Ghostbusters. Who knows? That's gonna be the lazy one.
So.
Whatever works. But yeah, next week we got Halloween Ends. So that I'm sure that's gonna be another lengthy discussion because I know all of us were not too fond of the last one.
Did you like it?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's more of an intense fan. So
Are you a big fan of the series?
He's all mellow, but he's
the original, are you like a classic? The first one is the best one.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I actually like the second one the most, personally.
Yeah, which is much slower. It's got that.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the pacing of the first movie.
Before they sped things up. Definitely.
Yeah. Before they stopped smoking the ganja so much and made a quicker movie.
But yeah, John Carpenter is awesome, of course. Wasn't he involved? Didn't he? I think he's doing the soundtrack for this new one, isn't he? For some reason, I thought I read that, but I could be wrong.
I love how horror movie directors are so multi-talented. Like every time you hear what's like, oh yeah, they also play the bassoon. What? So it's I like that.
He's been touring, playing his movie music, John Carpenter.
Fuck yeah.
Which is pretty awesome. Yeah,
I've not been able to see him in concert, but I know plenty who have. They've all raved about it, seeing him in person.
That'd be awesome, like the Thing soundtrack and stuff like that.
Back when soundtracks were good and not just pop music layered over a fucking movie.
Oh, they did, at least in this movie. They really used the original Hellraiser music and theme a lot in it, which was nice.
They're going back a little bit. The soundtracks are coming back, which is great.
I like that they did the classical score for this one with the original music. That was cool. And they even kind of revamped it. They had a scarier version of it that they were playing at times too.
Neat.
Nice. Andy. Sorry, we'll wrap it here.
Yeah, because I gotta go to the bathroom again.
Yep, all good. Yeah. Let's wrap things up. Of course, the best way to keep in contact with our podcast is to find us online. You can find all of our video content on YouTube at Handle with Scare Pod. We're also over on Twitter, where you can find all of our latest updates at Handle with Scare. But for now, guys, that will do it for us here tonight. We look forward to checking out the new Halloween and seeing what sort of shenanigan they tried to pull in regards to that lore. Which, who knows even know what to expect from that. But, maybe 20 years later, it will get the Season of the Witch treatment where, right now everyone might hate it. And then years from now, people are going to look back fondly on it. Who knows? Only time is going to tell. But we'll see you guys back for Halloween Ends next week. You guys take care.